embarrassing. When Jessica first asked me to speak at this event, I wasn't sure I was ready, or that I would have much to say. But then, in talking to her, I realized we all have something to say and something to share, our stories. On May 22nd of this year, just a week before I was scheduled to have my son Thomas, I went to the doctor's office complaining of a headache. Truthfully, I was worried because I felt little movement the entire pregnancy. But that last weekend, I didn't feel anything. I remember being worried Thursday night, and I did what the doctors always suggest. I had something with sugar, and I laid on my side, and I felt kicks. The next morning, Friday, I had a scheduled appointment. That was the last before my expected delivery, and his heartbeat was exactly where it needed to be. So I went home. That entire afternoon seemed like it was weeks. By the time Friday afternoon hit, I considered calling the doctor again, but I thought, you're so close. If you're still worried, you can go back on Monday. But Monday it was too late. That Monday morning, my doctor spoke to me for over 10 minutes explaining why my baby wasn't moving. He was getting bigger, it was less space, it was totally normal. And then he put the Doppler on and tried for 10 more minutes to find the heartbeat. I sat on the table begging in my head for whoever would listen, please let this doctor just be awful at what he's doing here, like not knowing how to use a Doppler. Please let my baby be alive. But deep down I knew. So then we were rushed to the ultrasound room where he confirmed that there was no blood flow and there was no heartbeat. We were given a choice to go to the hospital or to go home. The choices were laid out, but not really explained. I had no idea what it would mean to go home. I had no idea what it would mean to go to the hospital. But I couldn't imagine going home to see my 3-year-old son, knowing that his baby brother was no longer living and pretending that he was. So as we waited the 8 hours in the hospital between getting there and my C-section, we were bombarded by doctors, social workers, nurses, chaplains, and other staff. They asked us where we wanted to bury our son, if we wanted to cremate him, have him blessed, and as many as you know, the process is surreal. You don't prepare for these questions when you're preparing to bring life into the world. Would we know how he died or why? We were fortunate to discover the cause, because I know many parents don't. They never know what took their baby's life. It was a cord accident. He had 4 loops of cord around his neck and a true knot in the cord. His autopsy confirmed that the lack of oxygen due to the cord complications are what caused his death. Thomas died at 38 weeks, 6 pounds, 15 ounces, and 20 inches long. He was supposed to be my rainbow baby. A year earlier, I had experienced a different loss. I was pregnant with what I expected to be my second child, and at 12 weeks, the day I was supposed to announce my pregnancy, I saw blood. Later that week, my doctor confirmed that I was having a miscarriage. Thomas was supposed to be born exactly 1 year from the date of that loss. At the time, I thought it was a sign that things would be okay, that he would be my rainbow after a miscarriage. Before losing Thomas, a miscarriage was the most traumatic thing that had ever happened to me. Not knowing what to do with the sadness, I decided to share openly, and I have a community on Facebook that I had started years before, so I started with that group. What I realized when I shared about my miscarriage was how common miscarriage is, but I never knew because nobody talks about it. When we lost Thomas, I knew I needed to do the same thing, and I needed to start sharing. I had documented every single detail of my pregnancy, and everybody knew my baby boy was on his way. So the few days that I spent recovering in the hospital, I was bombarded by messages asking if the baby was here yet. So I started to share my story because I couldn't handle the questions if he was here when I knew he had died. I shared what happened, and the more I shared, the more comfort and support I received. As most of you know, the grief process is not linear and it can be very volatile. Losing a child, an infant in my case, is something that's hard to wrap your head around. It's truly unimaginable unless it's happened to you. I quickly realized that I could use my story not only as a way to heal, but also to help others understand what it was like to be a grieving mother. A way for me to help others to understand how I felt on a daily basis and to treat me and how to treat my son, and how to treat me and how to treat my 3-year-old son, Benjamin. I also realized that it was a way for me to help other mothers with living children find gratitude in even the biggest challenges. I shared information about what had happened to my son and the lessons I learned through our trauma. I talked about my complaints about lack of movement, and I shared stillbirth statistics. I shared things that I wish I had known. Just weeks into my grief story, I was sent a message from someone I barely knew. She thanked me for sharing. She said because of my post, her niece messaged her, when her niece messaged her that she was feeling minimal movement, she urged her niece to go to the ER that night. Upon going to the hospital, they determined that the baby was in distress, and the baby was delivered that same night, weeks early. A couple weeks later, I received another message from a local friend. She said that because of me, one of her friends had delivered her baby at 35 weeks. Her friend had experienced some pains late at night and had seen some of my posts on Instagram. She said she was going to go back to bed, but then I kept popping into her head, and she thought she better go to the hospital. Her baby was in distress, and they also delivered her baby that night. Sometimes it hurts to think about the things I wish I knew, but this is why I share with other mothers. We need to be our own advocates, to understand why kicks matter, to understand why it's important to know our baby's behaviors, to understand that you can ask for more, and to understand what more is. I find that sharing my stories helped tremendously. I feel blessed to have been welcomed into this beautiful community of women that make up the lost community. It's the hardest club to be in, but also full of some of the most wonderful people. There's a new type of normal that only a parent who has lost a child can understand. One of the things that I quickly realized after Thomas was born is not everybody had the same hospital experience as us. After Thomas was born, I remember sitting in the recovery room seeing a blue box. I asked, what is that? I had no idea. Why would I know what an air-conditioned box that there was an air-conditioned box for babies? Why would that have ever crossed my mind? What's that? I asked as I scanned the room, holding Thomas in my, holding tears in my eyes. I saw a blue box sitting next to the computer in the recovery room, and it had a big C on it. And all I could think was, that kind of looks like the Cubs logo. We were in the same exact recovery room that I had been in with my oldest son, Ben, 3 years before, except this time was very different. Instead of trying to nurse my living baby for the first time, I sat there with tears in my eyes, holding Thomas, soaking up his features, knowing our time was limited. He was still warm from being in my body just the hour prior. I asked to see his feet and his hands, and I let the photographer take pictures of us. They explained that it was a cuddle cot. I had no idea what that was. Why would I? There would be no reason for me to know that, just like there was no reason for me to have an answer when they asked me what cemetery or funeral home I wanted to use. When you prepare for life, you don't prepare for death. That blue box, the cuddle cot as they called it, was one of the things that I am most grateful for, and not all mothers get them. The side of the box had a name and a date on it, and it didn't occur to me until after that name and date was for another baby that was born still. So what was it? Why did it make our birthing experience a little bit less painful? The cuddle cot is essentially a miniature air-conditioned unit designed to connect with a bassinet. That little blue box with the baby's name on it enabled us to keep Thomas in our room overnight. It enabled us to have Thomas, what we had had with Ben, our first night together as a family in one room. That first night was also our last, but knowing that I had my son just a foot from my bed all night long was something I will never forget. Not all mothers get this experience, not all hospitals have them. They have to be donated, and unless you've had a loss, you would have no reason to know what they are or that they exist. I am grateful for the family who donated that little box, and I am so sorry for their loss, all at the same time. They donated it mostly because they didn't have one for their daughter. This is the post that I just read, is the post that, that Jessica had been tagged in. That box let us sleep side by side with our baby as the nurses came in and out of the room for that first night, checking on my vitals and checking on Thomas. While he never cried or opened his eyes, there was comfort in having him by my side that first night, just as he would have been had he survived. That box was donated by Annabella's Angels in honor of Annabella. There's no amount of time that would have ever been enough. But having 18 hours with our son, being able to hold him when we wanted, kiss his cheeks, and look at his perfect little hands, gave us 18 hours of memories, the only memories of his face and body that we will ever have. My heart breaks for moms who do not have this same opportunity, and I am forever grateful for Annabella's Angels for giving us the greatest gift that you can give parents who have lost a child, the gift of time. I am honored to stand before you and share my story and share Thomas's story. We all have a story. Our babies were all here. They were all alive, even if they never got a birth certificate. They were all alive. I want to thank you for being here to remember all of the babies born sleeping, as well as help raise money so that more hospitals can have cuddle cots, and as a result, more families can have the gift of time. It's been 4 months since we heard the words, "There is no heartbeat," and I am not the same person I was before that day. I won't ever be. I can't. A part of me is gone, and a new part of me is emerging.